Watch it, old man, one of the teenagers snarled, deliberately bumping into 90-year-old Arthur Green. The force of the shove sent him stumbling off the curb and into the path of oncoming traffic. Horns blared, tires screeched. Arthur, a decorated veteran of 3 wars, caught his balance just in time. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from a sudden, chilling surge of rage. The group of teens just laughed, exchanging high fives and swaggering off like they'd won something. 20 minutes later, still congratulating themselves in a nearby alleyway, they were startled by the sudden appearance of 2 imposing figures in Marine Corps dress blues. Behind them, the unmistakable sound of disciplined marching boots echoed off the brick walls. If you believe respect for elders, especially our veterans, is non-negotiable, type *** honor *** below. Because Arthur Green had lived 90 years, and most of those years were dedicated to one thing: service. Dang, he had enlisted young, lying about his age to fight in World War II. He stayed in through Korea and volunteered for 1 tour in Vietnam before finally retiring as a master gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. His modest apartment was a quiet shrine to a life of sacrifice: faded photographs, polished service commendations, and a carefully arranged shadow box displaying his medals. He never wore them, never boasted, but he cherished them deeply, each one a silent tribute to the men he'd fought beside, the lives given, the missions survived. His body was frail now, his steps slow and measured, aided by a simple wooden cane. But his eyes, those eyes still held the direct, unwavering gaze of a man who had stared down death more times than he could count. At date. Arthur lived quietly, a man of habit. His days were simple: walks to the park, visits to the library, a weekly treat from the bakery, a single chocolate eclair. He didn't ask for much, just peace and respect. But this day, during his usual afternoon walk to the bakery, peace was nowhere to be found. The teenagers were already there, lounging across a narrow bench outside the bakery, limbs sprawled to block the sidewalk. There were 4, maybe 5 of them, regular troublemakers in the neighborhood, known for their aimless loitering and petty acts of vandalism. Arthur usually steered clear, not out of fear. He had never feared anyone, but because trouble wasn't worth the energy. But today, there was no path around them. They were blocking the only sidewalk on a narrow, busy street. Arthur approached, voice steady despite the rasp of age. "Excuse me, lads," he said politely. "Could I trouble you to let an old soldier pass?" The apparent leader, tall with a sneering face and a backwards baseball cap, looked Arthur over with contempt. "Old soldier, huh? What are you, 100? His companion snickered. Arthur ignored the mockery, resting a hand on his cane. "Just trying to get to the bakery," he said. "If you wouldn't mind?" The leader echoed him mockingly. "Mind? Yeah, I think we do mind. This is our bench, Grandpa. Find another route." He stretched his legs out farther, completely blocking the way. Another teen chimed in, grinning cruelly. "Yeah, maybe you should go home and take a nap before you fall over." Arthur felt a familiar spark of disciplined anger, the kind that came from years of training, years of war, but he kept his voice level. "There's no need for rudeness, son, just asking for a little courtesy." "Courtesy?" the leader scoffed. He stood up, towering over Arthur, intent on intimidation. "You want courtesy? Maybe you should show some respect to your betters." Then, in a moment of casual cruelty, he did something Arthur would never forget. As the old man tried to step around him, the teen stuck out his foot and gave him a sharp shove on the shoulder. "Watch it, old man," he snarled. Arthur stumbled violently off the curb. His cane flew from his grasp as he landed heavily, but miraculously upright, in the street. Horns screamed around him. A car swerved to avoid hitting him. His heart thundered, his breathing ragged, but his reflexes, honed over decades of danger, pulled him back to safety. He scrambled to the curb, clutching his chest, shaken but alive. The teens erupted in laughter. "Look at him dance," one yelled. "Maybe he learned that in the war." They high-fived again, their cruel amusement echoing off the sidewalk. Then, noticing a few disapproving stares from nearby pedestrians, they strolled off down a nearby alley, still chuckling, leaving Arthur standing alone, humiliated and trembling on the edge of the road. "Ah." A kind woman hurried to his side, retrieving his cane and placing a steadying hand on his arm. "Those dreadful boys," she said, her voice filled with concern. "Are you hurt, dear?" Arthur winced slightly, his hip aching from the stumble. His dignity was bruised more than anything. Still, he managed a faint, grateful smile. "Just startled, ma'am. Thank you for your kindness." He brushed himself off. But inside, something deeper hurt. The sting of casual cruelty, the hollow absence of respect. He had faced enemy soldiers who showed more honor than those boys. He picked up his cane, their laughter still ringing in his ears. The éclair no longer tempted him. His appetite was gone. All he wanted now was to go home. But then he paused. Not from the pain, but from something older, something deeper. An instinct. He was a Marine, and Marines didn't walk away from an unprovoked assault. Not even at 90. He wouldn't confront them himself. Those days were long past, but there were other ways. He knew the neighborhood like the back of his hand. That alley led to a dead end, an enclosed courtyard behind a rundown warehouse, a known hangout for delinquents. He also remembered something else. The local Marine Corps recruiting station was just 2 blocks away. And the man in charge, Gunnery Sergeant Miller, had a well-known soft spot for older veterans, especially those who had served in World War II and Korea. Arthur had met him once, briefly, at a VFW event. The young Marine had stood at attention when introduced, eyes full of respect. Arthur fumbled in his coat pocket for his flip phone. No frills, just a keypad and the number to the recruiting station stored in its limited contacts list. He dialed. His fingers, once trembling, were now steady with cold purpose. Marine Corps recruiting? Sergeant Peterson speaking. How can I help you? Sergeant Peterson, Arthur said clearly. This is Master Gunnery Sergeant Arthur Green, retired. I need to speak with Gunnery Sergeant Miller. It's a matter of immediate concern. An assault on a retired Marine. Disrespect to the Corps. The boys are in the alley behind the old packing plant, corner of Elm and 3rd. There was a short pause, then a shift in tone. Sharper, taut. Master Gunny, stand by, connecting you to Gunny Miller. The line clicked, then came a gravelly, no-nonsense voice. Gunny Miller, who's this? Gunny, it's Arthur Green, Master Gunnery Sergeant, retired. The shift was immediate. Master Gunny Green, sir, what can I do for you? Arthur recounted the incident in clipped factual terms. The blocked sidewalk, the mockery, the shove, the stumble into traffic. He didn't embellish, didn't ask for revenge, just gave the truth. They disrespected the Corps, Gunny, he said quietly, and they put one of its own in harm's way for a cheap laugh. Silence. Then Gunny Miller's voice came through, cold and clear. Master Gunny, are you injured, sir? Shaken. A bit bruised, but functional. Understood, Miller said. No more words. None were needed. Elman. 3rd, you said. The alley behind the packing plant. How many of them? 4 or 5? Young, mid-teens, I'd guess. Consider it handled, Master Gunny. Gunny Miller replied, his voice suddenly tight with a controlled fury that Arthur recognized instantly. Aye. Well, you stay clear of that alley. We'll counsel them Marine Corps style. The line went dead. Arthur knew precisely what Marine Corps style counseling entailed, especially when delivered by a motivated gunnery sergeant and a few eager recruits. He found a bench at a safe distance, one with a clear view of the alley's entrance, and sat down to wait. He didn't have to wait long. Less than 10 minutes later, the quiet street transformed in a way that felt almost surreal. Marines began to arrive, not in combat gear, but in a striking mix of uniforms. Some wore crisp Service Charlie dress, others were in utility fatigues, still in duty mode. Leading them was Gunny Miller, a force of coiled intensity, moving like a predator on mission. With him were about 8 Marines, some seasoned recruiters, others young poolies awaiting boot camp. You could see in their eyes that they revered him, moving in silent synchrony behind their leader. They weren't running, but they covered ground with that uniquely Marine Corps efficiency, intimidating, precise, and deliberate. As they reached the mouth of the narrow alleyway, Gunny Miller raised a hand. The group fanned out. 2 of them positioned themselves to block any escape, their expressions grim, posture radiating an authority that made mall cops and local officers seem like children playing dress-up. The remaining 6 followed Gunny Miller into the dim confines of the alley, vanishing into shadow like ghosts on a mission. From his vantage point, Arthur couldn't see what happened inside the alley, but he could hear it. First came the abrupt end of the teenager's loud, cocky chatter. Then, silence. A silence so sudden, so complete, it echoed like thunder. A moment later, Gunny Miller's voice rang out, not shouting, but pitched just loud enough to carry. Each word was sharp and clear, laced with that cold, hard authority that could strip paint from steel. Arthur couldn't make out the exact words, but he didn't need to. He knew that tone. Every Marine did. The tone of a drill instructor eviscerating a recruit who'd stepped far out of line. A tone that promised swift, unambiguous, and unforgettable consequences. There were no sounds of violence, only the relentless pressure of words used as weapons. Controlled, precise, devastating. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only 5 or 6 minutes, Gunny Miller's voice ceased. Then another Marine's voice took over, equally firm, but more instructional. Arthur guessed he was explaining some finer points: respect for elders, for veterans, for community. There was another long silence. Then, one by one, the teenagers emerged from the alley. Right. Gone were the cocky grins and loud bravado. In their place, pale faces, wide eyes, trembling limbs. Some looked like they might cry. They didn't run. They crept, as if hoping not to be noticed. No eye contact. No words. They shuffled away like prisoners released from judgment, glancing nervously over their shoulders as if expecting divine retribution to rain down behind them. Gunny Miller and his Marines followed a moment later. Their expressions remained stern, but a quiet satisfaction hung in the air around them. The mission had been completed. Message delivered. Gunny Miller spotted Arthur on the bench and strode over. He stopped and snapped to a perfect salute. Master Gunnery Sergeant Green, sir. The situation has been addressed. Those young men have received a thorough orientation on the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, with particular emphasis on respecting their elders and those who have served. Arthur slowly rose to return the salute, his hand steady, his chest full. Thank you, Gunny. And thank your Marines for me. No thanks necessary, Master Gunny, Miller replied. His eyes still burned with quiet intensity. We take care of our own, always, and we don't tolerate disrespect to the cause or to those who built its legacy. He paused, scanning Arthur's face. Are you sure you're all right, sir? Need a ride? Medical attention? I'm fine, Gunny, Arthur said, a small but genuine smile creeping onto his face. You and your men have already provided the best medicine. Gunny Miller nodded, turned sharply, and addressed his Marines. All right, Leathernecks, fall in, back to the station. Good work. They formed up in perfect sync, executed a smart about-face, and marched away with the same fierce discipline they'd arrived with. The street was quiet once again. But it didn't feel the same. Something had shifted. Arthur watched them disappear, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the sun. For the first time in a long time, he felt seen, not as an old man, not as a burden or relic, but as a Marine. Still, always, the respect wasn't nostalgic. It was real, present, and earned. And suddenly, that eclair he'd been craving didn't seem like such a bad idea. In the days that followed, the story of the Marine intervention in the alley became local legend. It was told in hushed tones around neighborhood barbershops, diners, and sidewalks, half in awe, half in amusement. The teenagers involved were never quite the same. For weeks afterward, they walked with unusual humility. They gave wide berth to anyone over 60 and displayed a sudden, almost reverent respect for military insignia. Arthur Green resumed his quiet walks, but now, when he passed the Marine recruiting station, there was always a crisp salute waiting for him from whoever was on duty, and always a subtle nod of understanding. Because the Marine Corps ethos doesn't fade with age. It doesn't wither with hardship. It endures. And when one of their own is disrespected, the response, whether on a battlefield or in a quiet alleyway, is swift, decisive, and unforgettable. Some lines you just don't cross, ever. But semper fidelis. Subscribe to my channel if you believe the bond between those who served is unbreakable, and that respect for our veterans is not a courtesy, but a sacred duty.